Welcome to World Energy Television. I'm Richard Loomis, CEO of World Energy. You really don't have to go far to see the effects of this high energy economy we're in. We see it when we go to the pump. You see it when we open our heating and air conditioning bills. You even see it on television when you notice that Russia has invaded Georgia. Well, today we have the opportunity to visit with somebody who deals with these issues on a daily basis, Congressman John Culberson. Mr. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us.
You bet. Good to be with you. Thank you, Richard.
Well, for those that don't know, how long have you been in Congress and which district do you represent?
Well, I'm a native Houstonian, born and raised here, grew up in West University Place, fifth generation Texan, third generation Houstonian, and growing up here in Houston, of course, have sort of an innate understanding and love of the oil business, and in fact worked offshore in the oil fields in college as a mud logger. So from that end, it was a great experience for me, and have always been devoted to the oil and gas industry and understand how important it is for not just Houston but for the country, because oil consumption is going to continue to climb.
I agree.
No matter how much liberal, Nancy Pelosi and her liberal cohorts want to ignore it. Oil consumption of oil products, plastics, oil and gas is going to continue to climb, and we've simply got to have more supply, which is why I'm so passionate about drill here, drill now.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Right now, 97% of our transportation runs on the hydrocarbon, so we really can't get around this.
Oh, yeah.
How does our Congress see the energy issue as a whole?
There's a majority of us in the House, both Republicans and Democrats, that understand how important it is to drill here and drill now. And we have, in fact, I was one of the 5 instigators of this current House revolt going on, where we as Republicans are staying on the House floor because we don't want to go on vacation. I think it's ridiculous for the Congress to leave on a 5-6 week vacation when the rest of the country, we're in this urgent energy of this urgent, immediate energy problem. What we have found by staying on the House floor and talking about energy, need to drill here and drill now, there's a big majority of the House that's ready to do it. And Pelosi won't let us come back in for a vote because she's a hard left liberal that is devoted to, she says, saving the planet rather than saving America. So we would, I think, if we could simply vote, you would see the House vote to drill here and drill now. You'd see very strong support, including me, for renewable energy. I've always supported renewables and alternatives as a long-term solution. But we have to get over the ideas that we're all behind, is we need to drill here and drill now to get over the next 10 to 12 years, 10, 15 years, get us through that next decade, so we have, and then make the investment in the research and development, alternative fuels, tax incentives to the private sector to make those same investments so that we can move beyond the age of oil, which we know is coming.
Well, I think if we look at this and we say, okay, we need the hydrocarbons, that part I get. But there's been a lot of talk about how the oil and gas companies have lots of leased land and that they're not drilling. I heard Nancy saying that as well. How do the majority of congressmen view this?
Well, those leases are tremendous. The leases are tremendously expensive, Richard, and they take a long time. You've got leases that the companies have to make certain that they're going to get a good oil and gas play out of it. That because the rigs can cost up to $1 million a day. To those big, deep, those semi-submersible rigs that sit over those very deep offshore leases are $1 million a day, and you got to be sure that that's a really good oil and gas field. They've got to do the seismic work, they've got to do the preparation, they've got to locate the rig. When they move the rig out there, they've got everything positioned, all the casing, all the work that it takes to get it done. They'll drill multiple wells, as you know, out of one position, and then they've got to get the thing producing. That's, they actually hit a good field, they've got to hook it into the existing pipeline system out there in the Gulf of Mexico. These take time. Those rigs in the Gulf, it can take 6 years from the time that if they get the lease and they look like they've got good seismic work and look like there's a good field, they think they can hit it. It can take up to 6 years before they can really spud that well in, get it in where it's going to produce. But ANWR can be much faster. The North Slope of Alaska.
Yeah, ANWR is very close to a pipeline.
And very close to a pipeline. They can bring that in very rapidly. ANWR could be producing in as little as 3 years, I hear. They could, once they drill, the area is so there's such an immense amount of natural gas and actually oil up there off of in the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve that can be hooked right into the pipeline very quickly. So you could see that oil start to flow in as little as about 3 years. The pipeline's at 30 to 50% of capacity. The Arctic National Wildlife Reserve, as you're correct, is right there next to the pipeline. So,
well, in looking at the way Congress is structured today, it is a Democrat-controlled House. What is it like working as a Republican in the House when it's controlled by Democrats and we're dealing with an issue like energy?
Well, it is frustrating. You have to have a lot of patience and especially a sense of humor. Sense of humor is critical to this business because you're dealing with, you really are dealing with some extreme hard leftists. Nancy Pelosi's from San Francisco. They don't come any more hard left than she is. And every Democrat, it's just a fact, every Democrat in Congress is there to support her, no matter what they say. They may say that they're a conservative, they may say that they're a moderate Democrat, but the first vote that every Democrat will cast will be for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker, and she represents San Francisco and San Francisco values. And she said repeatedly that her job is to save the planet, that she's working hard to save the planet. And, you know what's particularly absurd about that, Richard, and I'm grateful for the little extra time that we get on a show like this to lay this out for folks. Most people in Houston may know this, but I want to make sure to provide people with this ammunition. Anyone that is against drill here, drill now because they're worried about pollution, they need to remember that there was during Hurricane Ivan, for example, there was underwater landslides in the Gulf of Mexico that severed dozens of pipelines. There were no leaks. Those pipelines sever them, close off, seal automatically. 2 years ago, there was an earthquake with about a 7 magnitude earthquake in Alaska. There was 12 feet of lateral movement in the Alaskan pipeline. No leaks. The rigs, the technology. I just returned from a tour of Saipem America out in the western part of my district, and a company that manufactures. This particular division specializes in subsea vehicles to go down and do inspections and move things around. They do a lot of other work in the oil field, and the technology is so extraordinary today that they can produce, drill oil with virtually no pollution if it's in the United States. So if Nancy Pelosi is so committed to saving the planet, what she's actually doing by prohibiting drilling in the United States, the oil consumption is going to continue to go up. The demand is there, so we're driving oil exploration overseas to countries like Nigeria, Angola, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, China, where they don't have the environmental controls.
That's correct.
Either they don't care or they don't have the environmental controls. So she's actually creating probably hundreds, thousands of times more pollution in these desperately poor countries where we're going to drill, and our companies are going to do the best they can, obviously not to pollute, but there's other guys coming in there and drilling. Chinese rigs are, they're producing oil rigs right now today that are a lot of them just, substandard.
Well, earlier,
and creating American jobs. Don't forget all the jobs that are created in America.
Well, and earlier in this interview, we talked about the time it takes from when you poke a hole to when you can put things on production, the oil that we need today.
When you actually get the lease. Thank you. You got to back it up because it's from the time you actually acquire the lease.
Correct.
That's when the top watch hits.
In the news, I've heard the reports that it's because it's 10 years away, it'll have no effect on gas prices today.
Absurd.
What's your opinion?
That's absurd. The simple knowledge that oil is coming online, that there will be a flood of supply.
Correct.
It's going to drive down prices. It's just common sense. You need to let the free market work, and it just drives me nuts. If we, for example, the Congress actually passed, the Republican Congress under Bill Clinton actually passed a bill authorizing drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve in the mid-90s. And had Bill Clinton signed it, that oil would be online today and the price of gas would be dramatically lower. Now, it's just common sense that you increase the supply, you're going to reduce prices. And we're all committed. Everyone that I talk to is committed to alternative energy. I'm completely committed to alternative energy. But we've got to get over this next 10 to 12 to 15 years.